There we go. All right, 5, 4, 3. Hello, everybody. James Floyd Kelly here, and I'm here with my friend Eric Wex, and welcome to another episode of Novel Ideas. We are up to episode 12. We
Woohoo!
are, we are rocking.
Absolutely.
12's a good number. It's a good magic number, right?
12's a great number.
We broke 10. Now we're up to 12. 20 will be. We'll celebrate 25.
We should celebrate 25.
Viewers, today is going to be a little different talk. It's going to be a little unusual because Eric's going to be jumping back and forth from screens where you'll see him versus what you're seeing on his screen. He uses a product called Scrivener, which is a very well-known writing tool for writers, both fiction and nonfiction. But Eric introduced me to a tool called Scapple, and I always have trouble with the name, but it's called Scapple, and it's $15 from the same people who make Scrivener. And I've been wanting Eric to talk to me about how he uses this tool because I've seen it. I just want to understand it a little better. So we figured, hey, let's turn this into an episode. So I'm going to let Eric talk about Scapple and how he uses it, and maybe you will find it useful like I hope to find it useful. So Eric, I'm going to hand it off to you and tell us a little bit about how it works.
Great. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to bring up my screen so that you can actually see the product that I'm talking about.
Okay. Now, will our viewers see, when your face disappears, our viewers should see what you're talking about? Is that correct?
Well, if I make it, now they should.
Now they should. It says Eric Wex is presenting to everyone, so okay.
There it is. So, Scapple is a mind mapping program. It differs from EndNote in that it's not about gathering ideas and putting them all in a pocket somewhere where you can look at it. It's actually about getting ideas, particularly thoughts, out. So this isn't so much like a note-grabbing software or something off the internet. You're going to want OneNote for that. This is about when you have thoughts in your head and you need to quickly get them on paper and then sort out the relationships with them. That's where Scapple is excellent. So for me as a creative fiction writer, I find this to be really important because when I approach an act of a book or a scene of a book, I will know some things about it, but I will have gaps. And before I sit down and try to write, I like to have those gaps pretty well filled in because it helps me be a better draftsman the first time. And I find I don't throw away thousands and thousands of words when I'm doing that. So it's a way of pre-writing for me that I find really, really constructive. So this is basically what you were taught as a mind map or brain cloud. I can't remember what else they called them when you were in grade school, but you were taught to make little bubbles, right. And you write ideas in the little bubbles, and then you connect them. So let's say we're working on a second act of a superhero story. These are things I know. It is the second act. And
okay.
Start writing them down, and if I can spell origin right.
You're nervous. Calm down, Eric.
It'll never. Whatever. There it is. now it's Orion. That's awesome. Whatever.
Wow, it really wants to autocorrect to Oregon, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. So. I know those two things are related. I'm writing a superhero origin story, and it's the second act. I know that my superhero has an awkward moment at homecoming. My superhero in this book is a 14-year-old girl. I know that I need 6 scenes during the second act.
Let me ask you this. Let me interrupt. After you type your note, I see you're dragging your mouse up to this word second act. Is that what creates the line?
That is what creates the line. Okay. I can, if I do control, I believe it is, or no, maybe it's option. I have to remember. If I do option, it's going to create an arrow depending on which way I drag it.
I see. Okay.
So I got a double arrow there. If I want to get rid of the connection, okay, so this is where, so far everybody knows how to do this, and I hear lots of people say, well, I do that on a whiteboard. This is what I do on a whiteboard. And I say, that's great. My problem is my ideas are never organized enough on a whiteboard, that I'm not going to end up erasing most of either the connections I've drawn or the ideas themselves and rewriting them.
Right.
Scapple is fantastic because it is a simple drag and click to connect something. Maybe it's not actually 6 scenes. Maybe that ends up being 6 scenes during the B story.
Right.
And I need a 7th scene, which is the midpoint. Okay, so now all these are related, and I can continue to show the relationships between them. Okay. So that's how it works. That's what you can do with it. It feels very, very basic when you first start out, but for me the best part is I will come to this blank screen with this blinking cursor, and it gives me a very little box which keeps my mind thinking in short sound bites, and I just start throwing them on paper. So one of the things you can do is I could highlight this, and I can do a control return. No, it's not. It's option return, command return. Command return, I get new note, new note, new note, new note. And I won't try to organize anything. I'll just start throwing them down on page in all these boxes. All the little things I know. She's wearing a pink dress. She drinks apple cider from the table. She knocks the table over because she's super strong. The awkward boy kind of thinks she's nice. All that stuff. All the stuff that I know is going to happen in the homecoming scene, I'll just start throwing it out there, and then I can go back and connect it later. So I find that to be very, very helpful for me in getting my ideas out where I can see them efficiently, and from that point I can find my holes. Right? From that point it becomes evidence what I need to fill in.
I noticed behind the screen you're currently on, you've got some example or maybe the existing stuff, and I see color. So I assume you use color for some sort of purpose?
Yeah, I can sort things by color.
Okay.
And let's go to, this is probably, so at this point we need to say spoiler alert. Because I am dealing with stuff that actually came into the far bank of the Rubicon. So the next few slides that I'm going to show are items that were actually used to write a book.
This is more towards the end. I remember this scene. These chapters, excuse me.
Right. Like this one. This one is probably one of the ones. One of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to block out a space fleet battle from beginning to end, and I wanted it to feel complex, and I wanted it to feel authentic, and I wanted to make sure that I had the bad guys doing stuff and the good guys doing stuff at the same time. And what did those actually look like? How did they respond? And I might just be presenting the good guys' side, right? But I at least need to know what the bad guys were doing
to counter
it, to make it feel authentic. Now, I feel like I didn't get enough of that counter. I didn't give them a counterpunch because the particular space battle I wrote was about the Allies having a big victory, right? That was the point of the scene. But I wanted at least to have that there. And it's my goal someday to write a battle where it really is punch, counterpunch, and it hangs on the edge of a knife, right? That would be a lot of fun. But that's where I think this kind of blocking that I'm doing here would become really, really important. And we're in the future. And in the future, I think that you're going to have a whole lot of AI taking over battles. So if you look at what I did here with color, on the right-hand side, over in this area, this is the Corpies, or the Unity, right? That's their fleet. And on this side is the Allied fleet and the decisions that they're making. The battle really starts, with what I call the transit ballet, who goes in through the gate first, because this is a gate-driven interstellar system, so you've got to get your fleet through the gate, and really thinking through the problems of what that was actually going to look like and who was going to go first and how that would work drove a lot of what I did. So if you could force open somebody else's gate, what are you going to send through first and how are you going to do it? And so, I start off with a whole lot of AI weapons, and when you read the battle, there's a lot of talk about AI that comes in this section. And then I just started walking it through and started thinking through the problems of how would they respond to the AI, what would the what would the fleet actually do, how long would it take, it took me. I realized it took me 7 minutes to 12 minutes before the first manned ships would actually go through.
Wow.
And I wanted to actually present that time frame in almost moment by moment, because there was a lot that was happening and a lot of data coming into my main character who's standing on the bridge. So we walk through it that way, and Scalpel then becomes a really effective tool, and I can shrink this. Scalpel becomes a really effective tool to kind of capture everything that's going on, and the color coding helps me keep straight what I'm actually representing, what lines of ideas I'm representing.
Now you said you use the color coding to organize the story. Is the organization done by you manually, or does Scalpel somehow do something with the colors? Can you like filter and things like that?
I would, in order to, let's say I want to make all these red like I have, right? I would come through and I would select all of them, and then I can go back through and, I can take some of these out, right, that I don't want. And then from there,
apply a color.
I can apply color.
Okay, so the color's really for your benefit. It doesn't actually provide any functionality. Like you can't say, hey, Scalpel, hide everything but pink, for example.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not in this first edition, but
so you're
that's
using
a fantastic
color.
idea.
I see how you're using color. You're using color to just organize your own thoughts for the story. The blue is the ally, is the good guys. The yellow is the bad guys. The pink is the timeline. I understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long did it? This is kind of a sub question, sort of off topic, but for instance, this particular thing called battle scene. How long did you spend? How long did it take you to develop what we're seeing right there on that top window?
That was, that was actually a pretty high pressure scene for me, and it took me a while to actually get my ideas on paper. Okay. So Scalpel usually comes out when I find that I don't know what's going to happen next, and there are times where I can talk it through with a buddy. I can get some ideas from that. I have a new story that that's going to start going up on GeekDad in a few weeks, actually, and okay. I'm in desperate need of getting some Scalpel time on that and actually getting some stuff down, because we need to have a story ready to go. And I guess the answer to your question is, I think I probably spent thinking everything out. Probably took me a week on this. But I felt like that at that time I was really functioning very slowly as a writer. So I wouldn't say I felt like that was good. I just feel like that's what was happening.
But when you finished, for example, this battle scene in Scalpel, and it's almost like a textual outline. You used this to go straight to your alpha chapter, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the idea, is that Scalpel gives me as much depth. In fact, let's pull back. Right, so this is the same chapter. It's called Counterattack, and this is where I started. Right, these are the things that when I first started writing this chapter, this is what I knew.
Okay.
And I had questions. You'll see that I have questions. Like right here in the center, I don't know if you can see it. I asked why a counterattack? Why is it that I wanted to write a counterattack right now? Well, again, spoiler, knowing where we're going, I wanted a false sense of victory for the readers. I wanted them, because I was right at the point where in the rhythm of the story, it felt like it should turn toward hope. Right? Yeah. The reader needed hope. And I wanted to give them both a true sense of hope, right? So I am giving them hope, but I also wanted to make it a false victory. And so figuring out how to do that, and without spoiling any more, I did do that in that chapter, right?
I was going to say, be careful, because you got to be careful. There's some big plot twists that
There's some big plot twists that I'm talking about, right? And that's fine. We gave the spoiler warning. I don't mind doing that.
That's true. That's true. Anybody watching right now, just go la 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 la, because
spoilers, right? And there were many things that I wanted, right? I wanted a heroic escape, facilitated somewhat by Jonas, right? And then I had this kind of opposite feeling that maybe Jonas needed a defeat, or at least a draw, that he was too heroic, that he'd done too much right. So, that ended up, that thought, which starts here, ended up being another major plot twist that was much more personal to Jonas, where he did have a defeat.
Yeah, I was going to say the defeat wasn't necessarily a fleet defeat; it was a personal. It was sort of a very personal type defeat. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is where the value of Scalpel comes in, because that idea actually comes out right here and changes the way the rest of the plot goes from that point forward. because of getting it down on paper and not having it be something that just kind of comes through my mind but never gets captured. So this is an essential tool for me to capture those things. So when I am done, I know I
really like this stuff. I like understanding how various. I always find it. I don't know about our viewers, but I always find it interesting to hear writers explain their process, because not every process is going to work for you, but sometimes you get a hybrid. You steal a little bit from this writer, a little bit from that writer, and this is really cool to see. Can you scoot that over to the?
Yeah.
Drag it to the left. I wanted to ask you one final question because we're almost out of time. I see the 2 blue blocks here, and then you've got them breaking off to 2 areas sort of fenced off. What are you doing there?
Okay, so the blue blocks in the center, I know I'm done with just spewing ideas on paper when I can write out a chapter summary.
Okay.
So when I can write out these little blue blocks, I know I have the germ of my chapter idea.
So that right there is a chapter.
That right there is the germ of the chapter that became the counterattack, right? And I won't, we've avoided some spoilers, so don't.
I was gonna say don't look too close.
Squint.
Yeah, because I recognize some of that, and I'm like, oh man, Eric, be careful, man. That's
exactly. It's there. But this was, and then this box became an idea which I really felt like I needed to do, and it felt important. And then you start running it out. This is where Scapple pays again. I'm not writing thousands of words to find out that this is a bad idea. I write a few little things down on paper, and then very clearly I go, okay, this is a real problem. And so it comes up with a big no that goes in the box. And then from there I ended up with this chapter outline, which is largely what happened in the chapter, scene by scene. Each one of these spokes is a scene, right? And then from there we actually go over to the battle where it's actually fleshed out.
Quick question: if those are scenes for a chapter, are you writing left to right, top to bottom? How are you?
I am writing from here around in a circle. Because it tends to, I tend to write clockwise in a circle because the other thing about Scapple is while I'm being creative, the thing I like about Scapple is I can get really OCD about making it look right. And something aesthetically about that for me helps me actually continue to generate ideas. Because I feel like my ideas actually have a neat flow to them, and that allows me to not get hung up on, oh, there's nothing here, or it's all messy, it's too complicated. By being, for my kind of that editorial voice that's always haunting a writer that's telling them that they can't do it, that voice really gets put down for me when I am actually sorting these things out in a neat way. So it's a great way to keep my internal editor at bay.
Well, I'll tell you what, for $15, I think you may have convinced me. It's I mean, that's not a huge expense to try it out. And,
no. It's not.
Well, I tell you what. Let's switch you back off your screen here,
so
we can.
And it integrates. Well, one thing I should say is that it integrates really, really well with Scrivener. So you can put that screen in as if you're familiar with Scrivener, you can do a split screen, right?
Right.
So these integrate as your split screen in Scrivener, so you can have your writing on top and your Scapple outline on the bottom, and just walk it through. So it actually works really, really well with Scrivener.
That's cool. So viewers, if you have any questions about Scapple, if you want any more details, if you think Eric needs to go in a different direction or maybe deeper in some sort of explanation, feel free to email us and tell us. We're not against coming back to Scapple and talking about it more. Eric, you mentioned something real quick. I just went blank on it, of course. You've got your story convention.
StoryCon. Yeah, story convention.
I call it story convention. StoryCon's coming up. It's coming pretty quick. What, 2 weeks?
It is 3 weeks away, October 18th, here in Vancouver, Washington. So it is at the Vancouver Community Library, and we would love to have you there. We're going to have 30-plus authors doing readings, sitting on panels, and doing book signings. So there's a great chance to meet a whole bunch of people and get to know some authors. Also, the night before at Vintage Books in Vancouver, Washington, there is a public reception where all the authors will be there. So that's another chance to purchase our books and do book signings. So you're welcome to come between 7 and 9 to Vintage Books.
Great job. And I just remembered what I was going to ask you. You had mentioned Geek Dad. GeekDad.com, viewers, is a blog that Eric and I write for. And
Yep.
Eric is going to be doing, and this is my favorite thing because I asked Eric about doing this a while back. I love old-time radio serials and cliffhanger stories where each chapter or each episode ends on a cliffhanger. Well, Eric's going to be doing something like that for Geek Dad. I don't know how many parts, maybe Eric knows, but it's going to be a serial story set in the PAX universe. Eric's going to be providing these little snippets of a larger story, and they're going to be told. Are we going to do it on a week-to-week or a bi-weekly, or have we figured that out?
My hope is to do about 2,000 words a week, and my hope is to do 10
weeks.
chapters, 10 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
10 weeks.
So I'm working.
That's like a novella or
yeah,
something.
right.
Like that. Yeah.
And that's I think it's a good challenge for me. I think it's right.
I think it's good. I think it's gonna be fun. I love reading stuff in bits and pieces, and I love being forced to. I'll read a book front to back in one sitting sometimes. Sometimes it's nice to not have the next part, and you're forced to kind of go, and you got to wait for it. So good luck with that, and we'll talk about that more as it gets closer.
We will.
But viewers, thank you for joining us. We're pushing it over on our. We try to keep this to around 15 minutes. We've gone a little over, so apologies there. But I hope you liked what Eric explained about Scapple. And if you're in the area, please visit Eric's website for more information on StoryCon. Mm-hmm. And then also please join us next week for another episode of Novel Ideas, and we'll share some more information about maybe Eric's serial storytelling skills. We'll see.
Yeah, right. Those have yet to be tested. All right, we'll see you next week.
Trial by fire, man. Trial by fire. All right, well, viewers, thank you again for joining us. Please visit Eric's website and submit any questions or comments you have. If there's something you want us to talk about or Eric to speak to directly, that's how to get a hold of us. Tell us, and we'll see about doing a future episode on it. So thank you for joining us. Eric, I will chat with you next week.
Talk to you next week.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Take care.